that functions like a real human tongue.
Why do you think we cover our mouths when we yawn?
So nurdle and tittle are names for things that we didn't even know had names.
The Pledge of Allegiance was not something that came out of like Betsy Ross or Francis Scott Key.
They are the band with the most number 2 songs that never had a number 1 song.
Well, hello, everyone. And this is a howdy, friendly, bucolic in a verbal sense way of welcoming you to another episode of Smart Drivel. This is Kurt Schneider.
And I'm Jon Ellenthal. I don't know what that means. My question is, do you?
Yes, bucolic is this gorgeous pastoral view of things, and I'm trying to envision that visual in a verbal sense.
Yeah, I know what the word bucolic means. I just didn't know what all the words surrounding it in a sentence meant. But that's okay, because this is Smart Drivel, where we promise the drivel and hope for the smart. So, Kurt, what are we going to talk about today?
So, Jon, today we're going to talk about little known facts.
How little known?
Well, I don't know. These were all little known to me. And these are things that I've either heard over the years, I've researched, or people have told me or I've read about. And little known facts that we're going to share with each other and therefore the audience. And hopefully the dribblers can use this to impress their friends at a cocktail party, talk to someone over Zoom and say, hey, we're about to start this meeting, but did you know that competitive art used to be in the Olympics?
I would like to yell out, no way that's true.
So competitive art used to be in the Olympics, Jon.
Competitive art?
Yes.
Art? Like
yes.
Arts and crafts?
Which gives all these small, pasty, no muscle people a lot of hope because they could get an Olympic medal actually only between 1912 and 1948.
Small, pasty, and what, little muscled people? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, let me get this straight. You're trying to tell me that in the modern Olympics, you're not talking about ancient Greece here, because they were big into architecture. In the modern Olympic Games, they gave out medals for art.
Specifically sculpture. So had Rodin lasted a few more years, he would have kicked ass, but he didn't. Music. So I don't know who got it between 12 and 48. Painting and architecture.
Huh. Well, I must confess, that is a little known fact.
I thought it was pretty cool. The fact that competitive art was in the Olympics. And I guess it's got to be referring back to the Greeks, right? Who loved art in all of its format.
It's what's amazing to me is that we're talking about the first half of the 20th century. This went on for many Olympic Games, and I never heard of this. And even if you go back to ancient Greece, it was the Olympic Games. I guess the games part is competing with others in whatever activity. So that is a little known fact. And whenever you share a little known fact that just doesn't seem like it can be true, then be prepared for me to yell out, no way that's true. And I warn you, because I was recently under the influence of general anesthesia. And I have been prone over the last few hours of yelling out things that may not make all that much sense.
No way that's true.
Yeah, but you know that's true. All right, Kurt, how many pleats are in a chef's hat?
Holy cow, there are a lot. 50? No. 200. 200.
All right, so that's a credible guess. You're quite a good guesser, as usual. There are 100. That in and of itself is not terribly interesting. What is interesting is the reason there are 100. And before I share that reason, I'd like to share that there are 108 stitches on a baseball, which is a beautiful thing.
Every one.
Yes, they make them uniformly.
How many stitches were in Frankenstein?
Unknown. That is not a little known fact. That is an unknown fact. It's a very different episode.
Do you know that Mary Shelley wrote that when she was only 21 years old?
Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein when she was 21. That's a little known fact by accident.
Whoa.
That's amazing that you could do something like that at 21. I'd shudder to think what you and I were doing at 21 and whether it had any redeeming or enduring value. Let's not go back there.
I didn't, but I was just going to say, not only was it amazing that she wrote it at 21, but she was a woman who wrote it at 21 in an age where women didn't write.
I think it's amazing she wrote it at any age. I mean, how many people have written a book that have gone on to become a classic over the course of centuries?
And she created a genre. It didn't exist before.
What is that genre? Horror?
Yeah. basically
He
like
invented the horror genre?
well, in writing, yeah, kind of like the Gothic horror, unless you count George Eliot's Silas Marner as a horror one because it was the most boring book that ever was, and it was horrifically boring.
Well, he wouldn't have won an Olympic gold medal for that nonsense.
She wouldn't have, John, because George Eliot was a woman.
I thought you mentioned something else that was a bad book.
George Eliot wrote Silas Marner.
Okay, I missed that part. So thank you for repeating it. Did I mention I was recently under the influence of general anesthesia? Now, George Eliot, who I did know was a woman, also wrote a book called Middlemarch, which was like 900 pages. And I had to read it for a class in college. And I wasn't that good at keeping up on my reading. But this time I rededicated myself. I really tried. And I read about 200, 300 pages that I had to be done, because that's a lot of pages. Who writes a 900-page book? You know what? If you're really good, you would have written it shorter.
So speaking about...
No, don't be speaking about nothing. I haven't told you why there are 100 pleats in a chef's hat.
That's what I was going to say. Speaking about big numbers, tell me why there's 100 pleats in a chef's hat.
Let me get this straight. You were about to transition us back on topic?
Yeah.
Are you feeling okay?
Yeah, I was under general anesthesia.
There are apparently 100 ways to cook an egg, and the 100 pleats in the chef's hat represents the 100 ways to cook an egg. How many ways have you cooked an egg, Kurt?
Like 12.
All right, well, then your chef's hat would look stupid.
Yes, it would. Big pleats. But you know what? Pleats are not in fashion anymore, so I would be plain pocketed.
How many years ago, what was the last time you wore a pair of pleated pants? And when you wore them, did you know that they were no longer in style? And my third question is, did you feel silly? I prefer you answer those in order, because a lot of times when you ask people a list of questions, they answer the last one first. Yeah. And that bugs me.
12, no, yes.
I forgot all three questions, but thank you for answering them in order.
By the way, you just reminded me something, and I think we've talked about this in a previous episode, but it is a little known fact.
No way that's true.
How we get the scoring love in tennis.
If you've told me before, which I do not doubt, I have done you the great service of forgetting so that you could tell me anew.
They used the scoring, and in French, if you were winning someone to 0, that person had a l'œuf, egg. So l'œuf was love. So 40 love, 30 love is really 30 l'œuf.
That actually makes a lot of sense, and you've even connected it to our egg cooking, so attaboy. I would lose a lot of games in tennis 40 merde. Did anyone ever call you a fathead?
No.
Really? Did you ever consider yourself a fathead?
No.
You know that it's actually not an insult because 60% of the brain is fat. So you were quite literally, as am I, in case it wasn't obvious before to everybody, we're fatheads.
So here is a little known fact for our audience.
What about me?
And for you too. Do you know that, and this is a cute one, John, sea otters hold hands while they sleep to avoid floating away from their partners? It's like the ultimate cuddle, John.
Wow.
They're cute.
So they hold hands with their partners. Do they ever hold hands with the rest of the sea otters?
Yeah, they get an orgy going.
You know what that's called when a group of sea otters is holding hands? A raft, which makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Who knew we knew so much about sea otters, Kurt?
In this episode of, wow, I want to impress people, give me something else.
All right. Well, one of my favorite little known facts takes us back to a great childhood snack and a great childhood commercial. You, of course, have had many Tootsie Pops.
Yes.
And there was that incredible commercial. I think it was like animated and not even that many colors, where a kid went around saying, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? And no one
knew.
And he went to the Mr. Owl, and Mr. Owl pretty much just sort of gobbled the whole thing up by biting it. However, an enterprising group of students at Purdue University, because they could not let this burning question rest, actually invented a licking machine that functions like a real human tongue.
And that's all they used it for?
If you're going to build a licking machine, there are plenty of ways to use that, but they focused on getting to the answer to the question of how many licks it takes to get to the center. And they determined that it took 364 licks. Now, because this question is so important to humanity and its survival, they were not the only group to study this question. And there have been a number of answers, so this is not definitive. Most of them do end up in the 2 to 300 range, but I must confess, I'm with Mr. Owl. Just bite the damn thing.
Oh, yeah, just get right to the center.
You and I are impatient people. We're not licking 364 times to get to the center of a lollipop.
I'm surprised they had to invent a machine to do that when they could have had a lot of volunteers, I would think.
As you pointed out, there are no shortage of student volunteers who you could give $5 to do anything on a college campus to. But they invented a licking machine, which I hope lives on today, Kurt.
I'm sure it does, and it's probably in some museums that are traveling around. All right, here's something. Why do you think we cover our mouths when we yawn?
I would like to report that I have no earthly idea, and I am prepared when I hear your answer to say, no way, that's true.
Well, you know how we cover our mouths when we yawn?
Yes, I accept your premise.
This comes from ancient Rome.
Really?
Yeah. And you're going to love this association, and I don't know how they got away with something that it was this sort of unconnected and made a connectivity out of it. Doctors noticed that a lot of infants and babies were dying early.
Oh.
They also noticed that babies couldn't cover their mouths when they yawned.
So they assumed it was causal?
So they thought yawning allowed a person's vital life essence to escape their body. And if you cover the mouth, you prevent it from doing so. And babies couldn't do that. So the life essence went out and all the infants died.
That's probably not the reason, but that in the absence of science or another explanation that makes sense, you go with what you got. I mean, when we don't understand things, we make up stories to explain them. Now, the real reason I would think has more to do with vanity, that you're not eager to show your molars to the people around you, or maybe you're just sensitive to the fact that yawns are contagious, and if you cover your mouth, perhaps it makes it less so. What theories can you add?
I think that brushing teeth and oral hygiene was not a big thing back there, so back in the ancient times. So you'd cover your mouth so that you wouldn't have your halitosis spread.
Okay, well, that's another one. I am thrilled that you mentioned brushing your teeth, because that is a transition from podcast heaven, Kurt. Do you know that there is a name for the little blob of toothpaste that you put on your brush before brushing?
Just the blob.
There is a name for the blob, and it's a great word, and I think we should endeavor to use it whenever possible. The little blob of toothpaste that comes out of your toothpaste container and sits on your brush is called toothpaste tube. Good point. Is called a nurdle. Nurdle. That is what it's called. And I guarantee when you brush your teeth the next time and you squeeze that little toothpaste out, you're going to go, look at that nurdle.
Did this come from Dr. Seuss?
No, but it does seem like a Seussian word. It does seem like a made-up word. And if we were to make up a language, I hope that we'd have the word nurdle in it. But I will not stop there.
Just so you know, by the way, Dr. Seuss invented the word nerd.
I did not know that. But I think that does sound true. So I'm not going to yell, no way, that's true. Did he invent the candy Nerds? Did he get a licensing fee for that? Or what's up with that?
Nothing.
And he invented in which one of his books?
One of the books in the 50s. So it wasn't until the 50s. I know he wrote earlier, but it was in the late 50s. And there was a character, I think, who was nerdy, now that we say it's nerdy, and his name was Nerd.
So he actually had the characteristics of what we commonly think of as a nerd?
Yeah.
Well, good for society picking that up and staying true to its original origin.
I also think there's a book with characters that are wimpy, but they're WHIMPEE or something like that. And that's where we got the word wimp.
All right, so I'm not done blowing your mind with nurdles, because there's another word that I learned that is for a thing that I had no idea didn't have a word for it. Sometimes when we write, well, always when we write a lowercase I or a lowercase j, there is a dot at the top of those letters. You know what it's not called? A dot. Instead, it is called a tittle. So nurdle and tittle are names for things that we didn't even know had names. How cool is that?
It's like, and I think we've talked about this, the thing that covers the shoelaces, it's called like an eaglet or something like that.
Yeah, that's a little thing at the end that allows you to thread through the holes easily.
Yeah. So tell me again, tittle is the dot on I's and J's that are lowercase.
Yeah, because clearly dot, it doesn't get the job done, even though it seems to be the more common use. But tittle is the word for the dot over the I and J in lowercase. And nurdle is the word for the blob of toothpaste on your toothbrush.
And I used to have one of those printers. It was tittle matrix. It took forever to get all the word perfect to come out.
I'm going to leave that one alone. And I'm just going to say you're welcome for me teaching you nurdle and tittle.
Dot matrix, tittle matrix.
Oh, I didn't even pick that up.
Yeah.
Did I mention I was recently by the way, that was really clever now that I understand it. Because I was thinking, what were you talking about? But yes, dot matrix.
So, Jon, here's another one that I was fascinated when I heard this because it shattered a lot of sort of what I thought were sacrosanct beliefs about this country.
Oh, my.
Do you know that something we, because we're old, grew up doing every day in school?
The Pledge of Allegiance, right?
The Pledge of
Either that or morning announcements.
So every day we did it. The Pledge of Allegiance was not something that came out of like Betsy Ross or Francis Scott Key or something like this. It was actually written for a contest to promote sales of a weekly children's magazine.
No way that's true.
It was called Youth's Companion, and this contest took place in 1892 when it was chosen the winner.
That's crazy. So that's a little homage to capitalism in the American history, that one of our most ritualized expressions of patriotism actually has its origins in a commercial promotion.
And another thing on top of that, under God, that's been a big issue, you include it or not, wasn't added until 1954.
What were the circumstances that led to it being added?
Don't know, but I bet dollars to donuts that it was Cold War. Right. Communism.
All right, I'm going to give you another one that is going to relate in zero ways to what you just said, except for the fact that it's a little known fact.
Good transition.
Thank you. So we're all familiar with the wonderful Wizard of Oz, which was a book written by Frank Baum that is a well-established anchor tenant in Americana.
You told us something in a previous podcast about the last name of Dorothy, which I thought was fascinating, which I didn't know.
Dorothy Gale. That's right. Dorothy Gale, Gale. It may have been a little bit of a... So, you know what? It had a little allegorical thing going on there, didn't it? And we, of course, you can't think about Dorothy without thinking of her cuddly little friend, Toto.
Oh, the little doggy.
The little doggy. So this is the little known fact. In the original staging of Wizard of Oz, Toto was a cow.
That does not make sense.
Yeah, I don't know why Frank Baum, who in the book wrote it, Toto as a dog.
I think the book came first, and then they did the play.
The amazing thing is that Toto, at least temporarily, whether it was first or second, was a cow. Tell me what the most popular letter in the English language is. And by most popular letter, I mean appears in more words than any other letter in the English alphabet.
Give me a hint, vowel or consonant?
Let me give you some guidance. You had to buy vowels on Wheel of Fortune. You didn't have to buy no consonants.
So it's a vowel.
I'm thinking.
I would say E.
That is correct. Did you?
Oh, yes!
Did you choose that because my last name starts with an E?
No, I chose it because there are a lot of words with E. And by the way, the word the, which comes up a lot, has an E in it.
So you are correct. It's E. And I'm impressed by both your guessing, and I'm still impressed by the Tittle Matrix printer. That was well done. Guess what percent of English words contain the letter E? This is my follow-up question.
This is a massive number. You wouldn't expect it. I would say it's 34%.
How?
34%.
That's outrageous. I mean, that's outrageous. There are 26 letters, and you think one letter, despite being most popular, could appear in a third of the words? Let's just have you take a random sentence, and let's count how many of the words you use without thinking have an E in them.
Did I mention I wasn't too good in math?
You've been guessing. Well, you've been on a guessing hot streak. The answer is 11%.
That's what I meant.
11% of the words in the English language have E, which makes it the most popular letter. Pretty cool to know, huh?
Yeah.
What are the chances that you think you'll repeat that little known fact to someone in the next 24 hours off air?
Huge.
34%?
Yes, exactly.
What are the chances that you're going to use your tittle matrix printer joke off air in the next 24 hours?
I don't think anyone will get it. So out of context, I don't know if it'll work.
All right. Lay
So,
one on me. I'm ready to yell out, no way, that's true.
well, I told you where covering your mouth to yawn comes from.
I remember.
Where do you think we get knock on wood from? In the Celtic religion or the Celtic religion?
I was going to ask you, I'm confused. Is it Celtic or Celtic?
Well, John Havlicek was on the Celtics.
I know, but that's really the only reference to Celtic. Everything else seems to be Celtic.
So in the Celtic religion, they believed, it was pagan, of course, but there was a tradition that trees were home to sprites, spirits, and fairies. And knocking on the tree, the wood, you'd get in good with the spirits, or you'd tell the bad spirits to back off.
Huh. So knock on wood is to basically get the benefits, both good fortune and the prevention of bad fortune, from the spirits living in the tree.
Yeah.
Like the Keebler elves, for example.
Exactly.
Right. Maybe the Keebler elves and that whole campaign was the result of this same origin story. I think that's possible.
I'm sure it was.
And some of their cookies are definitely good luck. I mean, good luck that we have them. Good fortune.
And some are devilishly good, so we get the bad sprites as well.
You asked me earlier.
I did.
About Johnny Cash and A Boy Named Sue and Shel Silverstein. I should have given you this little known fact then because it's in the music genre. And this is really quite surprising. I would not be surprised if you yelled, no way, that's true when I'm done. The band Creedence Clearwater Revival. You know them?
My favorite band in high school.
You want to give me your favorite song from your favorite band in high school?
Well, I have a lot of them, but Bad Moon Rising is my favorite.
Okay. Proud Mary, of course, is up there too. They hold an unusual...
Looking out my back door is fantastic.
There's also Traveling Band. Great song.
37 coming out of the sky. Won't you take me down to Memphis on a midnight ride? I want to move. Playing in a traveling band. Woo! Woo!
So they have a very interesting record, which is, I don't think, a record that you kind of want to own and you don't want to own. It's kind of like getting the silver medal in the arts Olympics. They have 5 number 2 songs. I think we probably mentioned all of them. No number 1 songs. All of those songs, the hits we just mentioned, all peaked at number 2. They are the band with the most number 2 songs that never had a number 1 song.
So you're telling me they're the Buffalo Bills of song groups?
Yes, except the Bills have one more Super Bowl to lose in order to catch up with Creedence. That must have been terrible to being a Bills fan and Jim Kelly and Marv Levy losing 4 straight Super Bowls. Oh,
they get there, and then so what?
I mean, you're the AFC champions, which is great. 4 times in a row, no less, which is incredible. Yeah. But that's how I feel bad for them.
I'm going to give you one because we need to wrap up soon, but I'm going to give you just a little tidbit that you can put into your metaphorical pocket and pull out when you need it.
Okay.
If you sneeze while you're driving 60 miles an hour, now when you sneeze, your eyes always close. So your eyes will be closed for 50 feet.
Cool.
That's also dangerous. What if it's a hairpin turn?
What if you're driving on snow and ice?
Exactly.
What if you're in bumper-to-bumper traffic and someone stops unexpectedly in front of you?
But you're not going 60 miles an hour then, so you're okay.
That's a very good point you make. Yeah, it definitely sounds dangerous when you're driving. I'm wondering how many car accidents are the result of someone sneezing. Perhaps you could look that up, or perhaps a listener could put that on our Twitter feed or our Instagram feed, or go to smartdrivel.com and tell us about it.
By the way, on the eyes shutting, I once learned when I was in Boy Scouts that if you're like in Vietnam and you're creeping up on someone or someone's creeping up on you and you sneeze, dead person. So what you need to do is you hold your eyelids open and you won't sneeze.
Seriously?
But it gives you a massive headache.
Well, it's better than being shot, right?
Exactly.
All right. So I'm going to give you one as we close here. This is a hat tip to you and your son, Walker, who have a voracious appetite. You're insatiable when it comes to history, particularly New York history. I'm going to give you a New York history little known fact, which may not be little known to you, but little known to me. In 1673, the Dutch captured New York, from the English. And they named New York, you know? Well, I should give you your moment to shine then. What did they name New York?
In a funny way, because you think that since New York now is called the Big Apple.
Yes, it is ironic.
That they named it after their king, William of Orange. It was New Orange or something like that.
That is right. William III of Orange. Fortunately for history, the English captured New York back from the English in the following year and did away with the orange thing.
Do you know that orange is not actually an original fruit in and of itself? It comes from a mixture of others, like the tangerine and the lime or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's a tangerine and some fruit that is not as well known, like a pomelo.
Or the persimmon.
Or the pomelo in this case.
Okay.
So there's actually a fruit, which I would like to try, called the black sapote.
Who to what?
The black sapote fruit. It's indigenous. I like that word. Indigenous of South and Central America. And it tastes like chocolate pudding.
A fruit?
So much so that they actually refer to it as the chocolate pudding fruit. Black sapote. It has a creamy pudding-like texture, and it tastes like chocolate. So that's a fruit, man. We should have a chocolate sapote outing.
Better than a chocolate suppository outing.
Yes, although if you were in France, I know that's quite possible, quite popular and possible. All right, Kurt, this has been fun. We are now loaded up, and hopefully our listeners are loaded up with some fun, new, little-known facts that made you go, huh? Really? Oh, that's kind of cool. I'm going to tell other people about that. Did I mention that I was recently under the influence of general anesthesia? In any event, do you have any closing words you'd like to share?
We promised the drivel. We hope for the smart. There was some key takeaway today.
Do you have one takeaway for you that you're going to take away?
Yeah. The dot over the I and the J is called a tittle.
And not to mention the nurdle.
Yeah.
This will be referred to by history as the tittle and nurdle episode. Now listen, Kurt and I will be back next week with another brand new episode of Smart Drivel. Until then, we hope your life is filled with smart drivel, plenty of tittles, and plenty of nurdles. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.